Joining us on the line right now is James Rosen with the Fox News Channel, a man who's been doing some of the most definitive reporting on the Bo Bergdahl case, that controversy that continues to interest so many people here in the nation's capital. Good morning to you, James.
Brian, my brother, good to be with you.
It's good to be with you. And look, let's talk about Bo Bergdahl. Now, you've been doing some reporting that has to do with something called the Eclipse Group. First of all, I think it's pretty important to the story. Who is the Eclipse Group? What does it consist of? And why is their information so important to this story?
Okay, so I reported last week for Fox News on the documents that were generated by the Eclipse Group. The Eclipse Group is a private intelligence firm. It's made up of senior former CIA operatives and executives, and they operate like a miniature CIA as a corporation in the far-flung corners of the globe where you and I would never want to go to develop granular intelligence information on security-related topics. They had a contract with, as a subcontractor with the Pentagon in 2009-2010 to do just that. And as part of that work, as the New York Times reported back in 2011, the Eclipse Group had started to help on the hunt for Bo Bergdahl. It should be pointed out the Eclipse Group is run by a guy named Dewey Claridge, who your listeners with long memories will recall was one of the figures indicted in the Iran-Contra scandal. In the case of Mr. Claridge for allegedly lying to Congress, he was pardoned before his trial ended by the first President Bush. For example, the New York Times and AIG Insurance Group both hired Mr. Claridge's Eclipse Group in order to help actually find and secure the release of David Rode, the New York Times reporter who had been taken hostage by militants in Pakistan. So the Eclipse Group has a very strong track record, and it produces these things called situation reports, or sit-reps. And we got a hold of 13 of the Eclipse Group's sit-reps that had been provided to the Pentagon under this subcontract. And they dealt with Bo Bergdahl, and they spanned the period from October 2009 to August 2012.
And what did they tell you?
Okay, so we were the first to publish a lot of these details. So, for example, they told us that, and we had, these situation reports had the names of the men who were guarding Bo Bergdahl for the Haqqani network in North Waziristan. They had the exact locations where he was, the names of the people who owned the house where he was being kept in some cases. We had the dates that he escaped from the Haqqani network. Sergeant Bergdahl made a break for it on June 17, 2010, and got away with it for 5 days before being recaptured on June 22, 2010, and he was then confined like an animal in a specially constructed metal cage. All of this came from the Eclipse Group reports, and a lot of it was subsequently verified by the administration. One very sensational piece of information from the Eclipse Group's situation reports that has not been confirmed by the administration, but which seemed credible to us enough to warrant reporting, was an eyewitness account from a member of the Haqqani network provided to Eclipse Group in August 2012, in the very last of these situation reports that we got a hold of, which stated that Sergeant Bergdahl had been seen having converted to Islam, declaring himself mujahid, which means warrior for Islam, taking AK-47 target practice with his Haqqani network captors, being permitted to carry his own firearm, convivially playing soccer with these people, laughing frequently and saying salam, which is Arabic for peace. So what we reported is the truth, that these documents relate all of these various things, and that taken in sum, it seemed that Sergeant Bergdahl's nature of his relationship with his captors morphed over time, from periods of great hostility, where he was literally treated like an animal and a hostage, to periods where, according to a credible eyewitness account, but an unverified one, he had actually declared for jihad.
James Rosen, you've also been reporting about these 5 former Gitmo prisoners, the Taliban members. They're calling them the Taliban Dream Team. And yesterday we had your Fox News colleague Oliver North on, and he suggested that the Haqqani network, holding Bergdahl there in Afghanistan, they were really just interested in money. They could care less about these Gitmo prisoners. And Ali actually suggested that it was the Obama administration, maybe the State Department, who actually offered up these Taliban Taliban terrorists instead of the Haqqani network actually demanding them in return. When I pressed him on it, he said, you should ask James Rosen. He's been doing a lot of reporting on this. So, James Rosen, what do you say?
Well, we always listen to Ollie North. Look, Larry, a lot of what you're raising was, in fact, reflected in these situation reports produced over a 3-year period by the Eclipse Group, which had agents on the ground and paid informants and so forth in North Waziristan. And they talked about splits within the Taliban and the Haqqani network, where the Mullah Sangin, who was the person who actually controlled the 200-man rotation team that was used to guard Bergdahl for the Haqqani network, Mullah Sangin was only interested in money. It's stated in the Eclipse Group reports that there really are no prisoners at Gitmo. This was stated around 2009, 2010, when the earliest negotiations, outreach for negotiations to dispose of Bergdahl and resolve the affair were made in October 2009, many years before he was released. Mullah Sangin wanted money. It is explicitly stated that none of the people in Gitmo really held any interest for the Haqqani network except one, which turned out to be one of the 5 that was released, but that at the Taliban level and at higher ranks of the Haqqani network, they did want to do a prisoner swap. And so these sort of internal tensions amongst the enemy had played a direct role, a material role, on the outcome of the Bergdahl case and the timing of it, how long it took.
So, but getting back to that one point, they weren't all that initially focused on the money. They were focused on the money and not on the prisoners. I'm sorry.
That's correct. And they really were the chief guy that was holding Sergeant Bergdahl, Mullah Sangin, really was only interested in ransom.
All right. So now, what about this stuff about Congress being notified in a timely fashion? Anything on that?
Well, we're going to hear more about that at today's House Armed Services hearing with Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel. It must be said of Hagel that he is a 2-time Purple Heart recipient, I believe, from his days as an enlisted infantryman in Vietnam, that this subject is close to his heart, but that he has never been, even in far more congenial settings, the nimblest witness, and that this is likely to be rough sledding for him. And that'll be one of the questions on which he is grilled, which is why the administration made a legal determination that it didn't have to notify Congress and comply with the law here. We can probably expect a reprisal here on the Hill today from Secretary Hagel of the reasoning offered by the National Security Council last week. Their spokesperson, Caitlin Hayden, released a statement that said that the Secretary of Defense, in order to certify that this was a good idea, basically, this prisoner swap, such that the President could then issue the ultimate order for it on the basis of Secretary Hagel's recommendation, it states that the Secretary of Defense may transfer an individual detained at Gitmo to a foreign country if the Secretary makes 2 determinations. 1, actions have or will be taken that substantially mitigate the risk that the individual will engage in activity that threatens the United States or U.S. persons and interests. In other words, something's got to happen here with these 5 guys such that they're not going to be an immediate threat, and you'll hear Secretary Hagel talk about the sort of monitoring and tracking of these guys in Qatar. And number 2, the Secretary had to determine that the transfer is in the national security interest of the United States. And there you'll hear, again, this emotionalism, I think, from Secretary Hagel as a former enlisted man in Vietnam about how when he used to, and his brother as well, used to walk point and be in the jungles of Vietnam, often they had to go and rescue people who were in harm's way solely by virtue of their own decisions or in some case their own incompetence. I think that's the case you'll hear him make for Sergeant Bergdahl today.
All right. So much information. James Rosen, thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, Brian.